Hello and welcome to the Happy Hour Hustle podcast with our host, Kim Bodie.
I am absolutely thrilled to be chatting with you.
Principal and fearless leader of 834 Integrated Communications. On this podcast, you're going to learn a lot about a lot, like public relations, marketing, digital, and advertising.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Forgive us if you hear some dogs in the background. We love them, and there's a medium-sized pack at the office at all times.
Fantastic.
So grab a glass of wine, preferably one with ice in it, and learn a little something today.
You know, this happy hour hustle is near and dear to my heart. If you've been around me ever or read any of our blogs, you know that we operate on the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS for short. We self-implemented probably about 5 or so years ago. Anyways, about a year and a half ago, Amy Corder came into our lives and changed the entire trajectory of our business. So we're going to talk to Amy Corder today about how awesome she is and why EOS is the right choice for your business. I can't even wait. This is a long one, you guys, and I just really need you to tune in for it or take it in bite-sized pieces. Anyways, let me quick tell you about Amy. She grew up in an entrepreneurial household. She's been in pretty much every leadership role you can imagine: CEO, COO, CIO, CFO, sales and marketing. She self-implemented EOS in 4 businesses before becoming an EOS implementer, and I actually knew her before she was an EOS implementer. She served 4 years as a national commander and CEO of the Civil Air Patrol. She is a 2-star general, folks, a 2-star general. She led over 61,000 plus volunteers in fulfillment of the organization's 3 missions: emergency services, cadet programs, and aerospace education. So you can say she's a badass because she is. She has changed the entire trajectory of, 834 and quite frankly, my life. And I just cannot say enough good things about her or the EOS, program. I really, really encourage you to listen to this entire podcast and then reach out to her so she too can change your life. Amy, thank you again so much for being here. This is going to be my most favorite interview ever. I can already tell. So I'm going to start out, people know who you are. You're a big deal. I'm going to start out with an icebreaker. And I want you to tell us about your best or most unique job. And I know you have to narrow it down to just one, because I know you have a bunch.
Yeah, my career path has really been a career bingo chart, I think. I've been everywhere. So I think most unique would probably be that of when I led the Civil Air Patrol, the Air Force Auxiliary. Very different from otherwise my entrepreneurial roots and loving to do all of that, where I literally, as a volunteer over the last 40 years, in search and rescue, Civil Air Patrol does about 90% or so of all the search and rescue in the United States and Puerto Rico. I kind of got prodded to consider running for the state command position, the wing commander, quite some time ago. And then it was 2007, had the opportunity to become the national commander, which meant that I was leading over 61,000 volunteers, plus there's paid personnel, there's Air Force rated folks as well. And in pursuit of the search and rescue in the United States, including a cadet program of 28,000 cadets across the nation. And it was really cool. It was also a job where I really got to use my visionary talents. So I was really looking at the bigger picture and meeting with folks in the Pentagon and getting more missions and more support and all of that. So it was a lot of fun. I used to say I'm not really the national commander and CEO. I'm really the number one, sales lead out there selling Civil Air Patrol for all the cool things that we could do.
Yeah. And I thought managing 8 other people was hard. So thanks for putting that into perspective. Okay. So I should tell people a little bit about how I know you. I've obviously introduced you as, a badass and all of those things, and obviously what you do. You kind of came into the 834 life. What was it? 2 years, a year and a half ago? Yeah. And it was because we had self-implemented with EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, which is okay, but not necessarily recommended. And then we got to a point where it was like, are we even doing this right? I feel like we're not doing this right. And so that's kind of where we got introduced to you. And were you working with Jetco Federal at that time, or?
I was.
So, because I believe that's, yeah, like I think Sue Tellier, the president over there, recommended you to me. Okay. And then you kind of came in and you were like, let's dig through what you've done and then let's do it better. So, but I want you to kind of give an overview in your words, because, you know, there's a reason that I finally hired you, on what EOS is and who is Gino Wickman?
Who is that bad guy? Yeah, that great guy.
Who is that guy?
Yeah. So, what EOS is, it's the entrepreneurial operating system, and it's really about setting just simplifying and setting the core key 6 components of a business into focus. And so when we work with leadership teams, we make them to be better at 3 things we call vision, traction, and healthy. And vision is just getting everybody 100% on the same page so they know where they're going and know how to get there. Traction is all about instilling discipline and accountability throughout the organization. So no matter where you go, you look around and they're executing on that vision in the way that you want. And healthy means that you develop a real more cohesive, functional, open and honest, fun-loving team, because most of the time we're not, right? It's hard to do that and hard to lead. And when you say, gosh, worried about 8 people, at any time, that's kind of all we're ever focused on. When I led 61,000 people, I had 8 regional commanders around the nation, because you can only manage, lead that many. And then you work well with them to work their way down. So EOS is really, started by Gino Wickman. And Gino, people most notably know of his book named Traction. And that is where it started out. And much like you, Kim, and self-implementing, that's what I did over the last 10 years across 4 different organizations, where I didn't even know I could have hired somebody like me to help, because it's very hard to do it well inside. You're in the business, as we say. And, we really want the leadership team to be able to work on the business, looking at it from a 10 to 30,000 foot view. So Gino Wickman was an entrepreneur since the age of 21. Started out really, really young in that. His family business called him back in and said, we want you to run this. And then he realized, no, it's really in need of a turnaround. And so he very quickly went from, oh, I'm going to lead this, to, oh my goodness, I have to really reset so many things. And as he did that, he took that holistic view, and over the next 7 years, basically built the business back into an amazing organization that then someone came in to sell. And so he retired. Do the math on that. That was early on, right? Was able to,
at like 23.
Yeah, was able to retire. He ran the business for that kind of year and a half, those golden handcuffs that often happen because somebody says, how can it run this well? It must be that one person. And that's what's cool about this. It's not about that one person. It's about the team and building a really strong team. So he took a lot of the concepts, and you'll hear things from Jim Collins or Patrick Lencioni or others that really are used in EOS. So what he was able to do is put together a simple yet complete practical set of tools that really help organizations. And so much like what I've done across my career, it's been, being able to simplify and, demystify the complexities so that you're really just able to focus and get the work done.
I think it was the first business book that I read that I was like, this makes sense. And I think it was because there was a roadmap in it. This was like, these are the steps you take. Like, there's so many business books that are out there that, like, that's great. These are great theories. It's just wonderful. But how the hell am I supposed to do it? Like, I don't know how to do it as a business owner. Like, I don't know what or as a manager or whatever. So I remember reading that, and that was like an aha moment for me. And I think that I will say that's probably the only time that's happened in my life. And then I most recently read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team that you had recommended to me. And that only probably because I had read Traction, that book really resonated with me too. But I think it's interesting too, because you have been, a coach for, you were a coach before you ever became like an EOS implementer. So this is like what appealed to you about EOS? Like, I know what appealed to me as a business owner, but as like somebody who's going from like, because we had worked with you before you were even in EOS. I totally forgot about that. Like, we started working with you as just like, like a team coach or whatever. And then you moved into EOS and I was like, we're following you. But like, what appealed to you about that as like, somebody who is like counsels people?
Yeah, it really is that holistic ability to help, so in being an executive coach and and I've had just a lot of experience over time. I've been really fortunate in my career that I've been in places that really challenged me and then had me really thinking about how to do things very differently. So I led technologists that had a 99.5 on time, on budget, doing custom software development. And it was because it was really about the systems and the process and looking at everything holistically, who our clients were, how to best communicate to them, all of that. So so in terms of executive coach to EOS, the big aha for me was that, number one, I had used EOS multiple times. I knew how it worked and what difference it made. It was never what I led with. It was always, I would go in and fix something in particular and then realize, oh my gosh, this is a more holistic issue though, across the company. So it really was that ability to look at both the business and the people and even the processes right across that bigger view. And that's what's really important. So for specific example, in talking with leaders and helping coach them, there's always that thing that we don't see, and we might call it our blind spot. We might call it, it's not where we're totally open to see what's different. And so I talk with a couple of people, work with a couple of people in a team, and you just find that that what's real is somewhere between what person A and person B are saying.
Yep.
And it's because we just can't see it. So the what I really enjoy in EOS as an implementer is that I work with a whole leadership team and I teach the system, I facilitate the actual process, the session days, and help bring that vision and help instill that traction and help build that health. And then I also, though, have the opportunity to have everyone together. There's no, well, I thought this is what happened. And no, we're in the room together and, in a session day, a long day, it's one day, when we're all together and really focused in on it. It's amazing the clarity that comes from that.
Well, and I want to talk to a little bit about the EOS process. Like, nobody can see this, but I legit have the chart. Yeah. So, because when you start it and like, there's a whole series of like, I guess meetings, they call it the meeting pulse, right? That you have to go through. Look at me. This is an interview for you, but I'm just going to interview myself. No. So like you start out with like, well, maybe just walk people through like how they get started, because I think that's really important, because it's not all of a sudden you sit down for 2 days. It's like, we're going to work up to things. So maybe if you can just walk people through, like, say they're coming to you and they're like, oh my God, Amy, please help me. Like, I don't, like, kind of like I did. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, and I think you have so many entrepreneurs that are forced to manage people, and they shouldn't be, like me. So like, I think that's where, why EOS was, I don't know. I think that's why it really spoke to me, but yeah. So maybe just talk through like what the EOS process is. And for anybody listening, I will include a graph in the blog accompanying this, so you know what we're talking about.
No, that's terrific. And just to touch on that, as entrepreneurs, we do what we do, right? And we start out, we usually have some great idea, different from other people. We go after it. We pour our blood, sweat, and tears into it. I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. I got to see that and then became that. And then we may not be actually using our best abilities, our unique abilities, as Dan Sullivan would say. And so we get caught as an organization grows, recognizing that we're just, trying to pick up all the pieces like we always have. And in fact, there are better ways to do it. So in terms of the process, which we call our proven process, is how we engage with clients. And it's the journey I go on with my clients. And it's a journey to create independence, not dependence. So it is a set, process where we start with a 90-minute meeting, and it's just the overview. Another thing I find very important, we talk about leadership and management, not leadership versus management. It's leadership and management, which creates accountability, kind of an equation. And so when we start with the 90 minutes, it's everybody in the room. The whole leadership team needs to be there, not, the owner or somebody who's interested. And so as a result, we have a shared experience from the very beginning where they learn a little bit about EOS. I learn a bit about them. We see if there's a fit. I talk about the tools. I talk about the process, as you're asking, and that's the beginning of the journey. And from there, the leadership team determines if we have a fit and a need, and then we go into whenever they want to schedule it, what we call a focus day. And that's the first day of the journey. Now, often, and I think I've fallen into this myself at earlier times too, we say, well, let's figure out the vision. Like, that's the part we really want to dig into. We can sink our teeth into it. Let's talk about core values and core focus. And what we find is it really takes longer to build the traction component. It really takes us longer to kind of learn that discipline and accountability, that beating the drum, if you will, to stay on task. And so we start out with some leadership skills in the focus day we call hitting the ceiling, where we really dig in on what are 5 key skills that we're going to need to do this well. And then we start right from there to build the accountability chart. I did not say org chart. I said accountability chart, because we think about it as what is someone accountable for? What are the roles that they do? But we talk about it first as what the organization needs. And so when you build a chart with everyone thinking about the functions that are needed, and only after then actually put the particular names in, it really gives you a clarity of maybe, again, where the organization started isn't where it is today. And so instead of trying to craft something around each person, we instead say, what does the organization need? And then people can fill into a role or one seat or multiple seats around the organization. And so we start with that, set some rocks, those 90-day most important priorities we have, and start with a scorecard. So we're thinking about what the results are. It's not about activity, it's about results. And so that's the start of the next step of that journey. About 30 days after that, we go through a shared agenda of a couple of vision building days. One is 30 days, then another 30 days later, we finalize that, where we really dig into core values, core focus, the target that we're heading for. What is the strategy then of getting to the right people? So what's that marketing strategy? Where are we trying to get to what does a picture look like in 3 years if we're really doing well? And what does it look like in 1 year? What goals are we going to have that we need to hit? And then we dig into the 90 days, which for us are called rocks, and most important priorities that we need to do. So those 3 days happen across 1 quarter. And from there, that time-spaced learning, each time we've ensured that the EOS tools are being used well and to their best advantage in the organization. And then we go into really what we call execution mode, where on a quarterly basis, 1 day a quarter, teams would get together, work with me, and we would look backwards, see how we did. We'd look forward, plan where we're going, and along the way, there's always some teaching and increased facilitation and coaching that really helps the team get there. So that journey is typically about 2 years long. With at the end of each annual, we do a little bit longer 2-day session that really lets us look backward, look forward, really do a great job of building team health and trust. And so at that point, typically about 2 years in, or that many sessions, then we have our clients graduate. And what we do is see that they've, acquired all the skills and tools and comfort, and they've aligned it, they've rolled it out through their organization. Remember, I work with the leadership teams, but I then get them ready to roll it through the organizations, and then we graduate. So we celebrate, they've got it. Now, if they want some sessions facilitated down the road, of course, I'm, always available to do that. But we're saying they really have created that independence. So it's a great process. It's been used over 10,000 times, or over 10,000 organizations that have gone through this process, and across the world, there's over 100,000 that run their businesses on EOS. Again, you and like I did a number of times, did it self-implementing without an implementer, but are still running on EOS.
Yeah. Also, like, you can't ever leave. Like, I'm not going away after 2 years, like, ever. So, but I do feel like, I think too, because our journey started out with, self-implementing, I feel like we've had to make some corrections, along the way. And like, I remember when people would say, oh, we have an implementer. And I was like, good for you. I don't need one. And like, so wrong, just so wrong, because like, you have, you just, I don't know. It's like, they're like the Dalai Lama. Like, I feel like that's what EOS implementers are. Like, you just know to ask the right questions. You know how to drill down to the issue. Whereas I think a lot, what you have is so many leadership teams, we talk in circles. We talk about the same thing over and over and over again. Like, maybe we're talking about an employee, like the same employee, and we keep talking about this employee, but when you really drill down to it, it's not an employee issue, it's a process issue. You don't have your processes mapped out, and you don't have them, like, so it's like, it's interesting because like, it's not rocket science. It really isn't, but like, just the way it's all put together. I mean, and I think it's important for people that are listening to understand that this was an absolute game changer for 834. Now, we've been through ups and downs, and you always go through cycles with businesses, but EOS, if you are following it, you will be okay. And I think sometimes we got off track probably this last year, or yeah, maybe it was, well, whenever we got off track, but it's because we stopped following the EOS process, and we weren't taking the time to do it. And then we reverted back to our old ways. So I mean, if you're going to truly do it, you need to commit to it. And I think it's interesting because some people would say, well, so we have to have 90-minute meetings a week. Yes, you do. Like, we just had ours today. We just had our leadership L10, and we worked through stuff. And I remember, we went through and we're like, is that really an issue? Nope, that should go into our same page meeting, because that's just kind of like, that's not anything we need to talk about here. So I want to throw out some terms at you, and then I want you to just as succinctly as you can, just tell us what that means. Tell the listeners what it means. So, right people, right seat.
Yeah, so that's actually from Jim Collins, if you will, that having someone who really embodies your core values, because our core values dictate like how we expect to work together. It's who we are at our core. And so having the ability to attract and retain and hire and retain and review and reward and punish and everything based on our core values gives a great consistency. Then people know not only what they're supposed to do, but how they're supposed to do it. That's a really important part of it. And so that's right people, that they are us. And then right seat is that they have the skills, that they get it. They have that, they get out of bed in the morning and just know, like, this is the role I'm in, and that they want it. They're like, oh, I'm eager to do this. I know how I fit in the organization. I know the difference I make, and that they have the capacity. And the capacity, sometimes we have to learn some things. So we're not quite have quite the capacity initially, but we have to get it. We have to want the role, and we have to be able to, to either learn or, sometimes we don't have capacity because we're overwhelmed, or we have too many things we're doing. Well, the accountability chart can help us, resolve that. So, yep. So that's right people, core values, right seat, have the skills.
Core focus.
So core focus is why we're here to do what we do, right? Why we're on this earth, what we're great at. And so it's the purpose, cause, or passion, those things that make us just say, yes, we want to do this. And then it's also our niche. What is it that we do well that's really different? What sets us, apart and really focuses us in, so that across the organization, people know where they're in scope, doing what they're supposed to be doing, or whether, we're crawling off of our core focus. When we're not focused, we're not as good, right? So core focus really important for a business.
And I'll give people an example. Like, so ours, and like you said, it's core focus, passion, purpose. It could be, choose your word. And ours is, we use people, data, and ideas to deliver kick-ass integrated communication solutions. And our niche is, we find comfort in the uncomfortable, because we know if we live in uncomfortable, then we're constantly pushing ourselves to be better. So that's just an example of ours. Some people's are more simple. Some people's are a little bit more complicated, or companies are a little bit more complicated. But I mean, I think that at least gives people an idea. And I think that's helpful when you're trying. And one of the things EOS does a really great job of too especially when you're reading the book or like you're working through things, is giving you examples. They'll say, this is how some companies have done it. Like, because I think that like for some of us creative people, that helps us. We're like, well, how has anybody else done it? Like, why am I just supposed to pull this out of my head? I have no idea what to do. So.
Well, and as you know, we go through a process even of facilitating those sessions so that, quite as we say, I'm asking the questions, I bring the questions in, but the answers are in the room and they're in the leadership team. And it's amazing how the EOS implementer process really does bring that out. So to your point, Kim, that's what's tough when you're self-implementing, is that there isn't somebody that's asking the questions and helping and asking for clarification that sometimes really changes the answers.
Oh yeah, what we have in our VTO, which is Vision Traction Organizer, is very different than how we started out and how we initially had filled it out. I want to spend a little time talking about IDS. So what does IDS mean in EOS world?
Yeah, it's what we call our issue solving track. IDS, I stands for identify the root. So you're identifying the root of an issue. D stands for discuss, and where the leadership team engages, or whatever team in a meeting. I can talk about L10s in a minute. And then S is for solve. But when we solve, it's not, oh, okay, what a great idea. It's who's taking the to-do to go get some things done. So what are the actions that then need to result from this? And as you spoke about earlier, sometimes we just cycle through, like, why is that issue popping up again and again and again? And that's, for me, it's a clue, right? It's something then that tells us we haven't either gotten to the root issue, or it's complex and there are multiple, issues, and then we need to split that apart. And so, when we IDS, though, what's really most important is that we get all the issues on the list. We're creating a communication flow that really has everyone thinking about roadblocks that are in their way or opportunities that are in their way. For us, it's just an issue. We call them issues. And when they bring those in, we do something really important before we IDS. And what we do is we prioritize those, because we also know focus sometimes is lost because we're looking at something too far down the path, and it wasn't even going to be something we needed to think about this week. But now all of a sudden we're focused on that. And so we prioritize, hey team, what's most important? What do we need to solve this week? And so when we prioritize and then IDS, so we're identifying first. Otherwise, what do we do first? We discuss. That's what we all do, right? So we really have a rigor in, nope, get to the root, get to the root or roots, and then we discuss and solve. And when we solve with to-dos, when we come back the next week, we then would work our way through those and make sure that the to-dos got done. They're to done.
And then there's rocks, which I think are important for people. There's so many terms, you guys, like you really just need to hire Amy and then just do this, like, because it's the best thing that will ever happen to your company. Because I hit probably about 5 years ago, I hit a wall and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I hate this. I do not like my clients. I do not like how the business is being run, which was my own fault. I do not, I don't feel like I have the right employees. Like I'm just uber unhappy. And that's when Traction kind of fell into my lap. Literally, I read it. I was like, I shared it with the other two people that were on my leadership team, and they agreed this is something we need to do. And then we started down that self-implementation, path. But then we still didn't have some things right. Like we didn't have our, scorecard, so talk maybe about scorecard and then rocks.
Sure. And at a point, I think we should talk about the L10 meeting, the level 10 meeting. So, and as you talked about earlier with the meeting pulse, which is the sessions that the implementer, I would engage with the client. There's also in between every week that the leadership team initially gets together, and it's initially the leadership team until they roll it through the organization. And then it could be every team that's meeting weekly. And we have a very simple agenda. And it's so simple that people try to make it more complex, but it really works, where we check in, we segue, we get our heads out of the business, we really get on the business, thinking more about the team. So we segue with each other, how are we doing? What's our personal and professional best? We dig into what I'd call the reporting section of it, where we do check in on rocks, which we'll describe in a few minutes, and as well the scorecard measurable. So we really look at how the organization is going, and we do that in a way where we're not discussing during that. we're seeing if there are issues. So we're smoking out issues that are in the organization. Are there customer and employee messages, headlines coming from there? And then after we do that, we can now go check in on the actual issues themselves. So 2/3 of every level 10 meaning on a scale of 1 to 10, how did we do today? 10 being best. We want every meeting to be a level 10, because when they're not, if they're not effective and efficient, then that kind of sets a tone for the rest of what we do. So in that session, then in that meeting, as we talk about scorecards, for example, scorecards are just one of the key components, one of the 6 that for the data that really gives us a sense of what we expect, what results we're expecting. And when we focus in on results, not just the activity, and we also look at it and say measurables are really, needed for everyone in the organization. Like, everybody's there for a purpose, right? Everybody's there for a reason. And so what can we help them with to measure their progress so that they can then help smoke out issues where they find them? If they can't get the sales leads that they want, then what are we going to do differently? And the whole team helps IDS that, right? Help solve those issues. So scorecard and the measurables by each person. Real key is that we do have that accountability. We know who's responsible, not for gathering the data, but for actually making the action that generates the numbers and hits the goal that we want to hit as an organization.
And I think to give another example, so like I sit in, obviously I'm in the visionary seat, which a lot of the business owners are. And then there's the integrator. And that's really almost like the person that, like, they're the glue that kind of holds everything together. But I sit in that visionary seat, but I also am in the sales and marketing seat. And so the numbers that I report on, on a weekly basis, and yes, this is weekly, we do our 90-minute L10s every week. And that's our leadership L10, which the L stands for level 10. And that's just like, that's just what it's called, because it's a level 10. But anyway, so like I have to look at like what's in our 30-day pipeline, and I have to report on that. I have to report on the number of new leads that have come in that past week. I have to then report on how many sales meetings I've actually had. Whereas like, my HR and finance manager is reporting on, were there any billing mistakes? What's our cash balance? It's our ARR less, within 30 days, is it less than this number? So like, and that gives us a pulse on how we're doing. Like you just said, are there issues? Well, yeah, we've got like, our cash is nil or whatever, like, oh God, that's a big issue. Or, we've got a lot of unpaid, invoices out there. Well, what's going on? So every week work on the business, and that L10 makes us work on the business. Otherwise, as a business owner or as like, another member of the leadership team, you get stuck in the business and you stop remembering what's important. You're not being strategic.
Well said. It's such a simple agenda, and yet it's so powerful. And as we see the team build traction with that, right? It's discipline and accountability. There's not a need to say, I missed this because you just report your results. And then if there's something that needs to happen to resolve an issue, or to gain some help, or to even have, information that you need, you drop it down to IDS that to solve the issue around it and decide whether that's the most important thing. So often we spend time looking at and talking our way through. And so then we get to the end and we're like, we don't have time to solve anything, and if you're frustrated with that, listeners, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. Absolutely. Just that traction alone.
Yeah. I mean, I started this business when I was in my 20s, and I am in my 40s now. And this has been, it's the best thing I ever did for my business. It's the best thing I ever did for my mental health, quite frankly, and I think it sounds like I drank the Kool-Aid, because I did. I'm literally selling it on the corner. Like, I mean, I remember when people would talk about it, I was like, okay, whatever. But like now I talk in all these EOS terms like a giant nerd, and I just like, I don't care. Like I think it's really important that it also trickles down to the rest of the organization. And that's something that I feel like we, as my leadership team, we haven't done a great job doing it. And so there's these things called state of the company, where after you do your leadership, like quarterly, you also do, it's called the state of the company. And that's where you share basically the revised vision traction organizer. You report in how you did in the previous quarter, and then you set team rocks and you work through things that way. And I think it's just a nice reset. I pull everybody out of the office. I bring them to my house. I surround them with 7 dogs. I feed them. I usually provide booze. And then, we get out of the office and everybody's working on the business. And it's just really cool.
There's a human nature that, as humans, we have this kind of 90-day world. I used to always, and now it's way too many years to continue doing this, but I used to blame it on the college I went to, because we had compressed time. It was quarters. So we would work like mad, for 10 weeks, exams after that, kind of rinse and repeat, right? You'd go home. I just remember sleeping and then coming back in and, getting ready to start over again. Well, it's actually the human condition. It's the way that we operate best, that we can focus for a period of time and work on, for example, those rocks, which are the most important priorities for the quarter, and take some time to do that on top of the day-to-day activities we do. And at some point, we just have to finish that and stop and take a breather and look back. And that's, the state of the company. Look back where you've been, look forward to where you're going, set your next plan, your next 90-day set of rocks, and move on. It's fascinating how much that works. There's rarely has someone early on in their quarterlies not come in and said and proclaimed at the beginning of a session, I'm just glad we're here because I'm kind of over last quarter. Like, it's time to, and it could have been a great quarter, and you still want to just reset and really get running toward the next one.
So this is a lot for people to digest. So if you can share with them how they can obviously get a hold of you, I will post a blog that's got a bunch of links to resources like your website and all of that stuff. And I'll have some like diagrams in there. So I think that helps really explain it too. But if you could just share how people can get a hold of you, and then maybe like the one thing you want people to take away from this.
Yeah, the easiest way to get a hold of me, I described earlier on my kind of unique or different or crazy, job I had along the way was leading the Civil Air Patrol. And that actually makes me a 2-star general. So I led with a couple of stars on each shoulder and had the weight of 61,000 people on those. I still remember it. But generalamy.com, most people can spell. My last name doesn't get used quite as well. So generalamy.com, if you go to that in your web browser, it will redirect you over to the EOS worldwide site for my page, and you can certainly connect with me through that. And I think in terms of kind of the one thing, I think the one thing to know is just to recognize when I could help. I do the 90-minute overviews at no cost. So if at any point you think, oh my goodness, I would just like to kind of get a sense of where we are, my whole team will be there, my leadership team will be there, so I'll get to hear how they feel things are going, and that in and of itself can be really eye-opening and helpful. And have them all think up on the business for those 90 minutes. Happy to do those. That gives everyone a sense of, is this, is there a fit? Is there something that's needed here? And then another thing I think that's important is, Kim has helped me describe, I think, the proven process that we use over and over again to create this independence of, just companies that are 80% strong. And by and large, most organizations, we know this, by numbers, are somewhere around 20% strong. So if you can get 4 times more, let's say you're doing well and you're at 40 or 50% strong, and you can double that, that's the game changer, right? And so having the ability to get a chance to jump into a day, one of the things that we have is a guarantee. If at the end of my session you're not, or any implementer session, if you feel you haven't gotten value, then instead of paying the fee, you pay in feedback. And we really believe in that because that helps an organization, first see it free for 90 minutes and get a sense. And then if they jump in, again, there's that low hurdle to look at it. We love people to think about it being a long-term, a 2-year kind of initiative, but there's no contract. There's no need to do that. So it really makes it easier.
Yeah. And I will say, like, there's never been a session that we've had that I've not walked away and gone, thank God, just thank God. Thank God we did that, And then when you start out, it's not going to be that, it's going to be hard. And I want people to understand that it's a good hard, but it's hard. There will be people that are not the right people. There will be, people that are resistant, very resistant to the level of accountability that comes along with EOS. And there's a lot of times, actually, they will leave of their own accord. I've had that multiple times, but sometimes you'll have to have really tough conversations, but there is a format for it through EOS, and everything is tied back to, your core values and, your BTO. And so it makes sense. You never question that decision ever.
And it's wonderful to think about the clarity that you're getting in all of that with your vision, the key components: vision, people, data, scorecards, issues, that you know how to manage those processes, because you spoke to that. Without processes that, and we're not talking about the 150-page SOP, right? We're talking about, everything is simplified in EOS, but if you can stay, everyone following what you need to follow, and then getting the traction, it really gets there. But yeah, I'm humbled on the journey with each of my clients. There are just days, we might be, laughing or crying, but we're doing it together, and we're coming out the other side with the right plan and with the right actions and with the right people, and really making a difference. So it's an honored journey for me, and humbling every time I have a session.
Well, I can't thank you enough. I feel like we probably need to do another one of these because, I feel like we have so much more we could talk about. I think it would be really cool to also bring in another company outside of me that has done EOS that's maybe a bit larger, because I think that gives, obviously we're small, we're 9 people, and so it's still the same process though, which is what's so cool. But well, thank you, Amy, for being here. This was just amazing. And I guess if I can leave you guys with anything, just reach out to Amy, do the 90-minute meeting, and it will change your life. It will change your company's life. It will change your life. I am in a better place because of EOS and of you, quite frankly. So
it's been such a pleasure and an honor working with you and your team. So thank you, Kim. I appreciate that and appreciate the time today.
Well, thank you. Oh my God, love it.